By now, awareness about the dangers of mercury fillings is widespread, emphasizing the need for careful removal. Today's guest, a former traditional dentist, experienced a personal crisis due to mercury exposure from removing such fillings. Her transformative journey led her to embrace holistic dentistry. As the author of 5 books, a board-certified naturopath, and a therapeutic nutritional counselor, she joins us to share insights on thriving in today's world through a holistic approach to health. This is the story of living well with Dr. Michelle Jorgensen. Dr. Jorgensen, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. That's quite the intro. I love it.
Oh, I always try and be gracious with these intros. It's the one part that is kind of scripted to all of this.
Exactly.
You could probably tell because I read and sometimes get caught up. The rest of this is very, very natural. And as this is your healthier story, the story is always the big part that comes out in these interviews. And you went from one of traditional dentistry, probably placing mercury fillings into other people's mouths, and then having to go through something and struggle and actually have your own health issues. Can you take us through what that was like being a dentist and having issues caused by dentistry?
Yeah. So obviously I didn't know that it was caused by dentistry.
Yeah.
I was practicing just like I thought that I would for years and years to come. My father was a dentist. And so I was practicing with him and I'd watched him, he's still in his 70s, and he's still working. He's still practicing. And I just thought that that's how it went. And I started getting sick, but that's not a unique thing. There's a lot of people that struggle with health, and I had gut issues, and I swear everybody has some sort of gut issue today. So again, that wasn't that unique, but some of my challenges that were really big, that worse, I felt some unique is I was having a lot of memory issues to the point that I wasn't even remembering a patient's name from room to room. And I've always had a very good memory. So it was a pretty drastic change from what I'd had. But the big one was numbness. I had such bad numbness in my hands that I actually wasn't even able to hold instruments anymore. And that doesn't work when you're a dentist. You actually have to be able to have good dexterity. You have to be, be careful and do very fine movements. And I couldn't do it. So I went to every doctor, did, tests, MRIs, blood tests. I mean, everything over and over and over again. I was seeing chiropractors and massage therapists, and everybody was trying to keep me put together, and it just wasn't working. And so I actually had my practice for sale and was going to do, I don't know what, I was trying to figure out what my next steps were. That's when I really started getting into nutrition, when I was trying to heal my own gut. So I was changing and finding out about nutrition. And eventually in that process, I talked with a practitioner, and he said, you sound so much like me. Have you looked into mercury poisoning at all? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any mercury fillings. I mean, in dental school, they teach us that the fillings in the mouth that we put in the mouth, these silver fillings, are actually 50% mercury, but I didn't have any of them. So I said, well, I don't have any fillings. And he said, oh no, it's not the fillings you have. It's the ones you've been drilling out for the last decade with no protection. And that literally was the very first time I had ever heard that could be a problem. And not any doctors I talked to, nobody had talked to me about that this could potentially be the issue. So I had nothing to lose. So I said, all right, well, let's get tested and see. And that's what it was, mercury toxicity off the charts. So at that point, I had a decision to make, because the doctor said, there's no way you can get better if you're going to keep putting it in. You can't get it out if you're going to keep putting it in. So you have to figure out a way to do this in a different way. And that's really where my transformation started, is I had to find out, was there a different way? Was there a different way to do dentistry for my own health? It wasn't even for my patient's health at that point. It was for me to stay in the profession. But very quickly, it became about my patient's health as well. I said, wow, if this was in my own profession, and I knew nothing about it until I myself felt sick, fell ill from this. What else could be related to the mouth and health and all of these things? And it's since grown into a huge practice now that we have multi-specialty clinic and help people from all over the world. And it's definitely not a path or trajectory that I would have expected, because I didn't know that this could even happen. That's the big, I didn't even know it could happen.
And that's the thing with dentists. They are all have, I think, benevolent, wants and needs for their patients, for everyone. But it's just this misinformation around it. And I've heard multiple stories from biological and holistic dentists about, how it all started. Hundreds of years ago, they needed something malleable, and they were crossing over, the Atlantic, and it was easy to use and stuck in there and cheap, and all these other things about mercury and silver fillings, you could say.
Yep.
But we're in a day and age where we have such advancements, where things have quickly, evolved, and technology has allowed us to do so much. Why do you think, in your opinion, now that you've seen this, you've been aware of this, you've learned about it, why do you think we're still using this? I mean, there is a push, of course, now to get away from it, but it's still often in many people's mouths, and not many people are doing anything about it except, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's still in mouths, and it's still being put in mouths. So there are practices in the US that are placing these fillings every single day still. And when I tell people that, they're shocked. They're like, what?
Yeah.
It's still no, because they'll be like, no, that's been banned, right? No, there's very much no. It hasn't been in other countries. There are about 12 other countries that have banned this, but not the US. So I do have my own opinion. This is completely my own opinion. I do have my own opinion based on why it hasn't changed in our country. And a large part of it is because the American Dental Association and even some of the other organizations that are, kind of the watchdog organizations in our country when it comes to health, their job is the American Dental Association's job is to protect the dentist. That we pay them, and that's their job, is to protect us. That's not necessarily protect, but just to take care of the dentists, the actual dentists in the profession. That's the American Dental Association's job, is to take care of the dentists. Well, if there was research that showed, or anything that said mercury can cause XXS, can cause these issues, there would be a class action lawsuit and that would go against every single dentist who's ever placed or probably removed a mercury filling in their career, which would be every single dentist in the entire United States would be under class action lawsuit. That's just the way our society works. We're such a litigious society. And so the organization, like the American Dental Association, knows this. And so they know they can't let that happen. They can't open that bag of worms, basically. They can't do it. And so I don't believe it will ever be banned in the United States. They have cautioned against using it in women that are expecting or children under the age of 12. It might even be under the age of 6. So they've cautioned against that. But I don't think there's ever going to be anything that comes out and just says this cannot be used. It's going to be banned, because there's just too much risk of lawsuit. And you might think, oh gosh, well then we're hiding the truth. Well, that's why I'm here. That's why there's people like me that are sharing the truth, because we can. I'm not paid to protect the profession. I just want to help patients. I want to help And the good news is so the only talk I had in dental school about mercury was that there was a dentist in Colorado, and he was telling patients that if they had their mercury fillings removed, that he could cure things like MS and other problems. And he lost his license to practice dentistry and never regained it. And that is the only talk that I had in dental school, is if you do this, you will lose your license. So it's not exactly going to help to engender me to say, hey, let's go spread this message. But when this became personal for me, when this became my story, all of a sudden I went, all right, it's time to start talking about this. And I can talk about it from my story, because no one can tell me my story's wrong. No one can sue me for my story. My story is my story, and it's very much real. It's my life. And I have since gone to find that there are actually there's a lot of research that's showing that mercury is a problem. And you don't have to find research. Oh my gosh, look at the news. We're not supposed to eat tuna anymore because of mercury. It's not like this is hidden. The information is there. You just have to be able to find it. And I can tell you things now about mercury because it is backed by research. I won't lose my license anymore. Now, I can't tell you that if you have MS, I'm going to be able to cure you. I cannot tell you that. But I can tell you that mercury is the most neurotoxic substance on the planet. I can tell you that it's released from fillings 24/7. I can tell you a lot of things. So those are the things that I tell you, because those are true.
Yeah, and it is wild how you have to sometimes go into an organization's intent, what it's responsible for, to start to understand why these things happen. Just like you could look at the mainstream complex of conventional medicine, and you could say, well, pharmaceutical companies, their first fiduciary duty is to shareholders. That's really it, to maximize profits. That is their biggest duty, not to safety of the users or to anything else, right? And then you go down the line.
In a nefarious way, not even, oh gosh, they're out there so evil. No, that's just the business. That's the business model. And it just is what it is.
Yeah. And people sometimes have a hard time wrapping their heads around that, but that's the way it's always been. We've always kind of caught up with things. Science evolves, you learn, and you go on from there. And I am hoping in the next few decades, this is something that'll be phased out. You're right. Probably won't ever get to that point where they're like, sorry, We did that because it would be massive action of lawsuits, but hopefully we could phase out of that. And now we have to talk about what that phasing into would be. If you're out of something, you need to go into something else, just as your own journey led you out of conventional dentistry into more of this functional holistic dentistry.
Yep.
So that journey, your own experience led you. What was it like after that? So you found out, okay, the mercury is a big deal. I'm not going to do that anymore, but what am I going to start to do and change my conventional ways into something new? What was that transition like?
It's interesting because I had to find out, was there a way to do this, to remove these fillings and not breathe it in? And, now I think about it, I'm drilling a filling out, their head's there and my head's here, it's like, that's exactly where those vapors are going to come. It makes every sense in the world to me now, but it just wasn't even introduced as a concept before. But I had to look, was there an organization that was doing this? And the answer is yes, there actually is. There was an organization that already has protocol called the SMART Protocol, Safe Mercury Amalgam Removal Technique. You can go out there, you can look at their protocol, and it just walks you through exactly what you should do as a dentist. So I started doing this as a dentist. I started doing this for my own sake, for my own health. And all of a sudden, patients would come in and they would look around like, all right, you're doing some crazy stuff here. I'm wearing a great big mask and we're covering them. And they would ask, what are we doing? And of course, I would explain before they even ask, this is why we're doing this in a different way now. It's for my health, but I think this is a great thing for you too. Isn't this awesome that we've thought about, could this be a problem for you as well? And so patients started becoming very appreciative and saying, gosh, well, yeah, I'm really glad you're doing that. And, my doctor mentioned something about that. Can I tell them about you? And so we started talking to doctors. And the interesting thing is they knew a lot more about my profession than I did. From a health standpoint, a lot more about my profession. And so they started asking things like, oh, do you do ozone? And oh, do you do stem cells? And oh, do you do these other things? And I'd have to say, I have no idea what that is. Let me go find what that is. And then I can learn and then I can know more about it. And really, when we started diving into this, what do you turn to? The only word I knew was holistic. But here's the problem that I have with holistic. And this is why I actually call what I do health-based dentistry. The problem I have with holistic is when I tell you, maybe not you, maybe some of the people that are listening, when I tell you holistic dentistry, a picture comes into your mind. And it might have somebody in tie-dye and hold the peace sign and, some beads hanging in the doorway and incense burning. And, we're doing some chanting and waving things in the air, like there's just there's a stereotype that goes with that word.
New Age hippies, right?
New Age hippies, that's what it is. That's the holistic stereotype. And in fact, just today on social media, somebody was blasting me. I have no idea who this dentist is. No idea who this is. Just blasting me. Saying, yeah, she has all these holistic patients. And she did this little,
the air quotes.
Holistic thing, And I was like, wait a minute. Okay, this is what I talk about, that this concept of holistic has really become a stereotypical, that's not backed by science.
Yeah.
That's not what I am. And that's not what I do. And so that's why I call it health-based. Basically, holistic should mean we recognize that the body's all one whole. Like your teeth are actually connected to you. If you've never noticed, your teeth are connected to you.
Absolutely.
They probably have something to do with it. But for some reason, that got sidetracked, and holistic just means you're crazy and you're not backed by science. But that's not what I am. I actually have to back everything I do double and triple because people are questioning me. They're saying, well, how can you say that about mercury? And I can say, here's how I can say it. Here's the 10 PubMed research articles that show that what I'm telling you is actually true. And so I can back that. So really my journey in holistic or health-based dentistry was that I had to say, okay, I'm not going to do mercury fillings anymore. I wasn't doing them anyway. But now I said, okay, I'm going to remove it in a safe way. All right, why? Why am I going to remove it in a safe way? Well, because mercury does lodge in your brain and it causes X and Y, it causes these things. Okay, let's back that up. What else could be caused by it? Gosh, what are these root canals all about? How about what a wisdom tooth is removed? Does that do anything? And how about like metal implants? Or so I just started questioning all of these things. And instead of just going to the crazy talk place and saying, oh, well, I just think it should all come out, I'd have to go, you know what? No, I'm going to research this to the umpteenth degree. And I'm going to find 15 research articles to back what I am now saying about infection at the end of a root canal or whatever it might be. So my practice went from a general dental practice to a state-of-the-art,
Mhm.
highly researched, backed by science, the most technologically advanced place you will walk into kind of practice, because I want what I do to be 100% good for your health. And I want to be able to say, hey, your health is suffering and there may be something in your mouth that's causing it. So that was really where my journey went, is what else could be going on? What else could the mouth be influencing? And what can I really study and research to find out that I can share with people about this?
Yeah, I mean, you're so right that these words holistic, alternative have been co-opted. Unfortunately, the perception is not a positive one.
It's
As
not.
much as it's just a word, like, you look at things from a holistic perspective. Let's say if you're studying, you want a more holistic viewpoint. You want to be open to things. You want to see it from different prisms and perspectives. But yeah, I think that's partly to do, the conventional realm has done a very good job at saying, woo-woo stuff out there, new age, no science, follow the science. When the truth of the matter is, like you said, most of the people that I know that have gotten into something outside of the conventional, which you could call holistic, integrative, functional, all these
Whatever.
things,
Yeah.
have to be much more scientific about, because they have the burden of proof. They
Yep.
themselves were skeptics. They started conventionally. They
Yep.
understood what they were doing. They experienced something else.
Yep.
And they shifted and they said, but I want to prove it first. I want to
Mhm.
prove to myself. I want to take the burden of skepticism on and then show this is actually more scientific. And what you
Yep.
start to see is kind of the other realm of it maybe isn't as scientific as we thought. Maybe it is a lot more
Yeah.
guesswork and not really based in modern studies of what we're learning. I mean, the idea that mercury is not we know it's been harmful forever. And the studies are only
Well,
showing more and more and more just
yeah.
how harmful it is to the system, even in small amounts, like vapor coming out over time very slowly can absolutely have such a systemic effect, especially on the neurological system.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. It's interesting because there's just a lot of information that's always kind of bantered about, but honestly, standard of care in practice, that's what we have to practice through, is standard of care. A lot of it is just what we've always done.
Yes.
And we often will say things like, and you might hear this, that the education in professions is typically about 15 years even behind practice.
Mhm.
So if I were to go to a dental school today, they're teaching things that I was practicing 15 years ago. And they're going to teach what I'm doing in practice now about 15 years from today. So it is not an up-to-date thing. It's just a lot of what we've always done. So honestly, those of us who are really questioning and, like you said, bearing this burden of proof are usually much more researched than those that are just doing. And they're just doing what they've always done, but they don't really know why. Well, we have really taken the time and effort, put an effort to find the whys. And that's why we're questioning because we're finding, oh, maybe that thing that we've always done doesn't make much sense. It's just what we've always done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it definitely has changed. So that's really what I had to do, was I just had to start questioning. And in those questions, then searching for answers that I could back by science and back by also experience. What results were we seeing when we were doing doing these procedures for patients? What was happening,
Mhm.
and using that experiential knowledge also to really guide and what we're doing from a health standpoint for patients too. So my practice is pretty much 180 from what it was before. But yeah, we're still doing dentistry, and we're still doing
Yeah.
the best dentistry you're going to find anywhere. But it's just we're taking a completely different approach to the dentistry we do.
Right. And I think part of that different approach, as I understand it, is not just what happens within the walls of your dental practice, meaning the procedures and everything. It's how you're empowering the patients when they leave to, let's say, eat properly. And I
Mhm.
think that is a big part of what you have to look at when you look at things like the oral microbiome, which we've seen more and more of a focus on. Of course, we know our gut microbiome. Everyone's talking about it. I mean, all the big companies now are doing different types of Activia, yogurts and these things. But, we still miss, I think, a big part of the understanding of the oral microbiome and how much conventional type of products like Listerine and others actually harm the oral microbiome. But you yourself are a therapeutic nutritional counselor. You understand this quite well, the idea of nutrition. What are you telling your patients on how they should be eating to protect and help the health of their teeth?
It's interesting. That to me is the biggest difference between traditional practice and really what I again call health-based is, you come into the dentist and you have an exam and the dentist says, you've got a cavity. Let's get you scheduled. Let's get you back. Let's get that filling taken care of. You come back, you get the filling done, and then you go away and you plan to come back in 6 months again and do it all over again. But was there ever a conversation about what caused the cavity? And how do you make sure that you don't get another cavity again in 6 months? And also, what about the filling material that they put in the tooth? Is there going to be a problem with that, like for the rest of you? And are there other things that are in the mouth already that could be an issue? I mean, these are just so many different questions that we just never address. We never address any of those pieces. So for me, I talk a lot about what causes a cavity. And so what have you been told that causes a cavity? Because this is what everybody's been told. If you get a cavity, what did you not do enough of?
No, you didn't brush, you didn't floss, and you ate lots of sugar, those kind of things, right?
Yeah, right. Just brushing and flossing and eating lots of sugar. So none of those things are wrong. They're just incomplete.
Yes.
They're just incomplete. That's true. You should brush your teeth. You should floss your teeth, and you shouldn't eat a lot of sugar. That's actually true. What the sugar does is it feeds the bacteria that are in your mouth. They love sugar as much as you do. And they eat that sugar. And when they eat that sugar, they actually excrete. Their byproduct is acid. That acid then dissolves the minerals out of the tooth. So that is what causes a cavity. The bacteria then crawls into the holes that acid created. They eat more sugar, they drop more acid, they make a deeper hole, and eventually they crawl deep into the tooth. So the concept about there's actually an interesting dentist in the 1930s named Dr. Weston Price. And anyone who's ever studied nutrition or, even any kind of alternative medicine has probably heard of Dr. Weston Price, but not everybody knows he was a dentist. So he was really quite dismayed because in the 1930s, there were so many children getting tooth decay. Interestingly enough, there's more children today than there were in the 1930s, but he was very dismayed about this. And so he wanted to really get to the bottom of, he was actually the head of the American Dental Association research department. He wanted to get to the bottom of what caused cavities. So what he did is he actually found indigenous societies throughout the world. And what indigenous society meant was basically someone who hadn't been touched by the modern diet. Today's what they call SAD, standard American diet. These societies were still eating what they've been eating for centuries. So he found them, and what he did is he studied them, and he said, "What do your teeth look like? And not only that, what do your bones look like? What does your structure look like? What's your health? Are you able to resist disease? All of these things." And then the cool part is he had a camera. He could take pictures, which I think was just this. He was in such a sweet spot, He could not only research this, but he could take pictures of it. So he'd take pictures of these people, the way their faces were developing, all these things. And what he found is there was a direct correlate. It was interesting because some of these people that had the best dental health were like some were eating butter from grass-fed cows and some were eating blubber from whales. So they weren't eating the exact same food, but what he found is that the constituents of those foods were the same. And he found that people who had better teeth had 10 times more fat-soluble vitamins in their diets. So what are fat-soluble vitamins? They're the vitamins A, D, E, and K. And he just found straight across the board that people who had better dental health, better overall health, had 10 times the amount of those vitamins. So when I start talking to people about this, we even get to what do those vitamins do? Well, those vitamins act like gatekeepers for minerals into the cell. Because when you talk about a tooth, you can actually create a cavity-resistant tooth. I always joke that my brother had braces when he was in junior high, and it was my father's a dentist, and my father did the braces, and they were like the first of those newfangled white braces. Okay, so we did white braces. They weren't the metal ones; they were porcelain, but they were brand new. Probably had been out like a year. And what we didn't realize is that they would take on the color of whatever he ate. So they weren't metal, but they were soon orange and green and whatever he had eaten for the day. So it was really obvious if he brushed his teeth or not. And I'm pretty sure he did not brush his teeth for 2 years. Were so disgusting in those braces. He got the braces off and he did not have one cavity. So if brushing your teeth was the only component here, he would have had a mouthful. And I see this so many times. I'll have a family come in. Dad, no issues, no cavities. Like we got like 3 kids. One kid has like 7 cavities. The other 2 are fine. And then mom has a mouthful, and every single pregnancy, she has a bunch more. And she's so ticked off because dad never flosses. Dad doesn't even take care of his teeth, and he has no cavities. So she's just like mad. I take care of my teeth so good, and why do I get so many cavities? Obviously, there's more to it than just brushing your teeth. So nutrition is one of them. What those fat-soluble vitamins do is they actually grab the minerals out of basically the circulatory system, and they plug them into the cell. Now, teeth are made of minerals. So we need minerals to be able to keep our teeth and have them be cavity resistant. So if the gut is not absorbing minerals properly, then you will often show up with tooth decay.
Mhm.
If the body is using those minerals elsewhere. So mom just had 3 babies, nursing, pregnancy, lots of minerals going to grow those babies, grow those babies' bones. Mom didn't have enough for both she and the babies. So now her body is sacrificing her teeth for the sake of the baby. So when you talk about nutrition, I just say, okay, how can you get more minerals? Not only minerals, getting more minerals, how can you absorb more minerals? Is your gut actually working properly? Let's make sure it's actually working properly. So it's actually absorbing the things you need. And are you eating those vitamins that are necessary to get the minerals into the tooth itself? So, sure, I give people specific dietary advice. Okay, eat more of this, but it's going to be based on those things. Let's eat more minerals. First of all, high mineral content foods, and let's eat foods that have fat soluble vitamins. It's tricky because a lot of them are animal products, and a lot of people shy away from those today. And a lot of our animal products aren't as good as they used to be either. Pasteurized milk doesn't do the same job as raw milk does.
Mhm.
So it's a little tricky. So sometimes you have to supplement. So vitamin D and vitamin K supplementation is one of the things that I just tell people, you just may have to do this. If you're going to keep a healthy mouth, you just may have to supplement vitamin D3 and vitamin K2 forever, because it's going to help you get minerals into your teeth. We also talk about putting minerals to the outside of the teeth. That's a whole nother talk. If we want to talk about fluoride versus minerals in teeth, we can talk about that too. But that's really what I tell people is let's look at what all the factors are contributing to tooth decay. And most of it has to do with actually the minerals you're eating and the minerals you're absorbing.
Yeah, it's a really good point. If you just look around and you even look a little bit at history and you see those Aboriginal colonies in Northern Australia that would have beautiful teeth, or eating rugged thing, chewing a lot, biting into things, not this kind of processed foods that's so soft and easy. And then you get into James Nestor's work on Breathe, how mouths are getting smaller and more crooked teeth, and we have to take wisdom teeth out now and all these things. We've really gone backwards a lot when it comes to our teeth's health. And then you talk about nutrition and the confusion that big food has given us, that fat is bad, sugar's not that bad, carbohydrates, and then you keep going and it's always something, and everyone's always confused about these things. When if you just go back a little bit and say, hey, quality first, let's put nature first, let's try and eat a good diet that's rounded everything, and just do that, our teeth will absolutely benefit them from that so much. And that's something I know you have a homestead, which is, the next level of kind of nutrition. You're not even going to the grocery store so much. Can you talk about that? Because I find that always fascinating. And of course, an interesting thing, because not too many people do that anymore. But how has that impacted kind of the way you go about even viewing food and nutrition?
It's interesting because I'm in the middle of writing a book right now, and I'm talking a lot about plant medicine, but it also plants. I believe plant medicine is also food as medicine, using food as medicine. And a lot of that, well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So this is something that I think we don't think about. If we all just accept the fact that, let's say, a carrot has something good in it for us, it has some minerals, it has some vitamins, it has some things, it has some fiber, it has some things that our body could utilize. Where does the carrot get those things?
It's got to get it from the soil.
Yeah, right? It has to get it from the soil.
Got to come from somewhere, right?
It has to come from somewhere. Where does the carrot get it? It doesn't just materialize, from nothing. It has to come from somewhere. The carrot has to get it from somewhere. And the top of the carrot, the green part of the carrot, actually uses the sun's energy, because it's called photosynthesis. This is pretty miraculous. Like, honestly,
it really is.
And it's pretty dang miraculous.
I know.
It uses that energy from the sun, and it creates oxygen for us. But in that chemical process of creating oxygen, it also biosynthesizes a lot of the vitamins and minerals that are found in the soil. Basically, it synergizes them into something that's usable by our body. So that then begs the question, what happens if the soil the carrot is growing in doesn't actually have those things already?
Right.
The sun can't create
soil.
them. The sun can't create them. The sun can bioenergetically transform them to make them bioavailable, but it cannot create them. So if the soil doesn't have those things in it, then where do we get it from? Then that carrot we ate was just kind of a bag of fiber and sugar,
Right.
It wasn't full of the vitamin that we hope that we hope to get from it. So this is a challenge in today's world. So I am a huge gardener. We grow a ton of food, and in growing the food, I like to think of myself as a partner with Mother Earth, like I'm like her assistant, and she's doing the work and she's providing all the knowledge and information. I'm just figuring out how to work with her to make that happen. But that's a huge challenge in today's world, is that the food we eat doesn't necessarily have the things it used to have, simply because the soil it's grown in doesn't have the things it used to have. This modern science has figured out that you can grow a plant with 3 basic nutrients: NKP, nitrogen, potassium. What am I thinking?
Phosphorus?
The last phosphorus. Thank you. Like, what is that? What is the P? Unfortunately, we need more than that. So if the soil has nothing, we just supplement those 3 things. Then all that carrot has is those 3 things. It doesn't have anything else in it. So I love to grow real food, and I love to grow real food in real soil. And I just challenge people. This is hard. I know, we call it these food deserts, where there is not this food available. Again, if you're not getting it from your food, you're going to need to get it somewhere. So you need to be really aware of that. But food is miraculous when it's grown the way that Mother Nature intended it for it to be grown. So go support your local farmer. Go support your local CSA. Go find somebody who's growing this food. Most likely they're struggling. I actually started a huge market garden last year, and it did not clear expenses. It was in the red until we closed 8 months later. And the reason is everyone would tell me, "Oh, I've been meaning to come," but they never did. They never did, because it's just simpler. It's simpler to go to Walmart. Well, what's wrong with Walmart? Well, the food that they are selling has not been grown in soil that has those nutrients you need in it. And secondarily, when they transport that food from who knows where, grew it in Ecuador, maybe, and it had to come to Utah where I live. Well, if I transport my tomato that I grow to Ecuador, there's no way it's going to make it there. It's going to be a pile of mush long before it reaches Ecuador. So how does Ecuador's tomato come to me without becoming a pile of mush? Does anyone ever think about this? I really challenge people. I want you to think about this. How do you get a tomato from Ecuador to your home without it being a pile of mush? Because my tomatoes won't make it to in a car ride to California without being a pile of mush. What's the difference? Well, my tomato has something called an enzyme in it, and it's a natural thing that's in the food. When you eat food that has enzymes in it, what happens is that enzyme then joins your enzymes, and it helps you to digest the food and break the food apart into the pieces that your body can recognize. So the food that we eat, if it has enzymes in it, it helps us digest and helps us utilize that food properly. Well, when they're transporting a food from Ecuador to Utah, what happens is they irradiate it in order to stop that enzymatic activity. So they are going to inactivate those enzymes, because enzymes are the things that degrade the food. We want it to degrade the food because we want to be able to have that food in us degrade, turn into the pieces we can use. But when we're eating food that's been shipped from who knows where, they've turned off that enzymatic activity. So now when we eat it, our body's enzymes, our natural enzymes, have to work to be able to utilize that food. And we often don't have enough. So this is why people end up taking digestive enzymes. Why are they taking digestive enzymes? Well, they should be coming with their food, but it's not coming with their food anymore because they're being shipped from too far away. They've had to turn off that enzymatic activity. I just heard about a study or research thing where they were showing that they would eat a bowl of ramen noodles, and then they would study what was in the gut. They would literally scope and see, and they would see those ramen noodles intact weeks later, still in the stomach, completely undigested. So when you remove that enzymatic activity from the actual food, we don't absorb it either. And again, then you show up with things like tooth decay. You show up with things like weak bones and, and bone fractures, and you don't understand why, but I'm eating so much good food. You are, but the food you're eating actually doesn't have what your body needs to be able to utilize it. So this is like not supposed to be a doom and gloom talk, man. This has turned into one of those.
Not at all. I always say that people always are like, oh, you're fear mongering because you talk about toxins, this and that. It's like, I think you empower people by talking about what's wrong, and then you see how you could do it right. And I think one of the biggest things I've seen throughout this is this idea, we've kind of sacrificed our health for convenience and simplicity. When we need to go back and realize, just like Walt Emerson said, our greatest wealth is health. If we put that first, we are willing to do a little bit of that sacrifice in growing our own, in going to the farmer's market, understanding that food will spoil in a few days, not a few months. It's not in a box and sits there. Doesn't have an expiration date of next year, or something, right?
Yep. You want it to spoil. That's a good thing.
That's a beautiful thing. It's like if the insects want to get at it and the gnats are there, that's good. When they're keeping away from the food, that's probably a bad thing for you.
It's 100% true.
And unfortunately, we've kind of gone the opposite way. What's easy? What can I put on, just reach for, and months later it'll be the same and it'll fill me up. But it's not filling your health cup up. If anything, it's putting you in a state of disease and misery, and you're slowly getting there. And then at some point, something breaks and you end up in a hospital with something, and, oh, you have this disease and you have to live with it. Here's a pill, again, because convenient, easy, right away, take it. So I'm hoping that with a little bit of fear, people start to place the priority of health up. And it's not like, oh, what kind of car I drive, what this and that, like go above it. No, your health goes first. So I will say that this is, as much as it sounds like fear mongering and like end of the world stuff, it's education. So you place this higher on the priority list.
And it's not even fear as much as knowledge. That's what I see. Let's just provoke a few questions to go, oh, because it's just kind of like the same with profession. It's just the way we've always done it. Well, did you know that things have actually changed for the way we've always done it, and not necessarily always for the good? One of my favorite analogies or questions to ask people is, let's say, all right, if you took an apple seed and you planted that apple seed, what's going to grow? An apple tree. And what's going to grow from that apple tree? Bushels of apples over the lifespan of that apple tree, right? If you take a corn kernel and you plant it, one that's right off of the corn, and you plant it, what's going to grow? A corn stalk with ears of corn that are going to have hundreds of ears of corn that can then be planted to grow their own ears of corn eventually. What if you take a corn chip and plant it? What happens?
Nothing.
Nothing. What if you take one of those really yummy granola bars with like apple filling in them and plant it? What happens?
No apples out of that. Nothing.
No apples. So what have those processed foods lost? Life.
Yeah.
Right? Life energy. Like, again, we're talking like the woo-woo stuff. We talk about, vital energy, life energy. No, I'm actually just talking about the ability to bring life to something. Plant an apple seed, you can bring life out of that apple seed. If you eat an apple, it gives you life. It gives your body the things it needs to thrive. If you eat a granola bar with apple filling in it, it may give you sugar. It may give you a little bit of fiber. Those are biochemical things. Those are just simply the constituents or the makeup of the food. They don't actually bring life. They don't actually add energy, like energy, literal, like electrons to the cells that help your muscles move and your brain fire and your heartbeat. They don't bring any of that. They don't bring that life potential with it. They just bring a biochemical constituent. They bring a hunk of fiber.
Yeah.
And can we use the hunk of fiber? Sure. But if you ate the apple, it also has fiber. And along with it, it has the potential to stimulate and improve your energy in your system. So anyway, that's just always a provocation I like to tell people too, is what happens when you plant corn chip?
Right. Not a damn thing.
Nothing. It sits there, in fact, most likely because it's been processed, it's going to sit there a long time.
A very long time, right?
Yeah. So this is interesting things.
Oh, yeah. Is this something when you speak like this with your patients that they are getting right away? Are you attracting already, because you're in a different type of dental practice, patients that are appreciative of this? Or is this still eye-opening even to people that are open to come to you for a different type of dental approach?
So there are people who are looking for what we do because
Yep.
they're listening to people on things like this saying, hey, you should be looking for a different kind of dentistry. Your dentist may not necessarily be considering your health when talking about what's happening in your mouth. So they're already open to the fact that there might be something that they haven't heard before.
hmm
They're open to that concept. They are still surprised by some of the answers, though, I think, because it's very, again, like you said, we went backward. A lot of these things were known by our grandmas, by their grandmas.
Oh, yeah.
They've known it for centuries. But, today's modern world, we've said, well, no, that was all wives' tale. That was just all wives' tales. But really, when you think about what a wives' tale means, it means that like somebody's wife told somebody else. That's what's a wives' tale means. It means it worked for one wife, and she told someone else's wife.
Yep.
That worked as well. And so it was experiential knowledge that they had gained that they were passing from person to person to person. Now, the cool part is science now can take that experiential knowledge and can say, is it true?
Right.
We can look at the cell. We can look and see what is it really doing. And what we're finding is that, for the large part, what they were passing along through quilting circles was spot on true. They didn't have a microscope to validate it. They validated it simply by experience. But now science is actually validating it. And it's pretty cool that a lot of what they knew was really quite right on because they'd had centuries to practice. They killed a few people. Well, you don't eat that berry anymore. That's kind of how things. So they had centuries to figure it out. And anyway, it's nice that we're combining those things together. And in dentistry, there's a lot of now what we're combining together. In fact, I really like to emphasize that nothing's done in a nefarious way usually, and maybe we can talk about conspiracy. I don't even go there. That's not my vibration. That's not where I go. I look at it to say, everybody's trying their best. Everybody's trying their best, and we're just doing our best with what we have.
Yeah.
So there are some big controversies inside of dentistry that I stir up all the time. And just today, I had a bunch of people calling me out on some things, which I always take as a compliment. If they think I'm worth actually calling out, I'm like, great, let's talk. I am all for talking because I can tell you why I say the things I do. But some of those controversies inside of dentistry are fluoride. And, there's all sorts of political things. Oh, it's just because they wanted to kill us all and dumb us all down. You know what? I don't even go there. Let's just talk about why we don't use fluoride. There's another controversy around root canals. A root canal is problematic. There's another controversy around wisdom teeth and taking wisdom teeth out. These are all real pretty active controversies inside of dentistry. But if we go backward a little bit, we can find the reason they started and maybe where they went off track for things. So what do you want to talk about? Let's maybe bring up a couple of these controversies.
Absolutely. Let's start with the one you went to first, fluoride, because I do find that one incredibly sort of like, wait a second. If Colgate and Crest are telling me fluoride's good and my dentist is telling me and the FDA says it's good, like, why are you telling me I shouldn't use fluoride?
Yep, exactly. So let's go to where it started from. There was a finding that people who are using well water that had high levels of natural fluoride had more cavity-resistant teeth. The higher the level of fluoride to a certain point, the more cavity-resistant the teeth became. After a certain point, they actually were still cavity-resistant, but they became mottled. It's called mottled, where they were kind of covered with brown and white splotches on things. So this mottling was on the teeth, and it didn't look good. So we knew that they didn't want to have that much fluoride, but we knew we could add a little bit of fluoride, and it would strengthen the teeth. So as a public health initiative, they said, all right, well, let's just start adding fluoride to things because people were disturbed that there were so many cavities. All right, let's just start adding fluoride. Let's add fluoride to our, tooth products. Let's add fluoride to the water. It's an attempt to decrease tooth decay because tooth decay is painful. It's especially hard in low-income populations that don't have the resources to be able to correct things. It can lead to a lot of tooth decay and to a lot of nutritional issues. I mean, it's a big deal. So they wanted to stop tooth decay. The problem is that fluoride doesn't just act on the teeth, just like anything you put in your body. It doesn't just act on one cell in the body. So on a tooth, what it does, fluoride actually takes the place of calcium in the enamel out here on the teeth, and it changes the enamel crystal from a hydroxyapatite to something called fluorapatite. Fluoride incorporated into this apatite crystal. Well, that is a harder, more brittle crystal. On a tooth, it's okay because it's the outside layer and there's a cushion underneath it. In a bone, which it also incorporates into, it's not as good to have something that's harder and more brittle. So they're finding things like higher hip fractures and rates that have high fluoride levels. So that's problem number one. It incorporates into your bones as well. It changes your bone structure. Problem number two is fluoride sits next to iodine on the periodic table. They're cousins. They're very similar to each other. Iodine is necessary to activate so many cells that secrete things, but particularly thyroid hormone. So if you have an excess of fluoride in the system, what happens is that it bullies iodine out of that fluoride hormone and will bind to that hormone instead of iodine. So you have hormone that looks like it's been activated. It should work. You should get the energy you need, but you don't. You don't feel great. And your blood tests came back completely normal. It's because it's been activated by fluoride instead of iodine. So it's called, they're even calling this the type 2 hypothyroidism, where it doesn't show up on a blood test, but it's because of high levels of fluoride. A third problem, and this is research, this is shown by research, you can look this one up. They actually are showing that the fluoride does affect IQ levels in children. And this is the one people are like, what? No, you can't tell me that. Yeah, absolutely. Go look it up. There's a PubMed research article that shows this. So it's changing the brain chemistry because that fluoride is incorporating into places that other minerals would have. All of these things to say, okay, I don't love the concept of fluoride because it's going to affect so many other things. But here's my biggest contention. Teeth actually don't have natural fluoride in them. So when a cavity is formed, it's not because the tooth lost fluoride. It's because the tooth lost minerals.
Right.
So if it didn't lose fluoride, then why are we just adding fluoride back in? Well, certainly, can't we just add minerals back in? And that's really what the answer is just go back to what the problem is to begin with. The cavity is because there's too few minerals. Let's just add minerals back. How about if we just add the mineral that was the teeth are made of back in? And that's what's called hydroxyapatite. So hydroxyapatite people are talking about all the time now. What is it? It's just simply the mineral teeth are made of and bones are made of. Both of them are made of hydroxyapatite. So let's just take that. Let's just use that. So I have a tooth powder now that's a hydroxyapatite tooth powder. Just add the minerals back to the teeth. So I don't even have to fight you on what does fluoride cause. I can talk about it, but I don't even need to go there because I can just say, you know what? Teeth didn't lose fluoride. They lost minerals. Just put back what they lost. Then we don't have to talk about the problems with fluoride because there's no need for it anymore. Let's just use the mineral that a tooth is made of. So to me, there is a controversy there, but you don't even have to go there. Just put back what was lost and then you don't get cavities and you don't have to worry about fluoride either.
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't have to be an argument about this. It just has to be, well, there is an alternative and there's no sort of fuss about that. And that makes more sense anyway. Why don't we just go to that, right? Why don't we use that alternative, hydroxyapatite, and utilize that instead? And there's no need to do all the other stuff. So I agree with you 100%. It's just somehow people really get hung up on this. And you probably hear it a lot from conventional dentists. How dare you say that when we're helping children with these fluoride, treatments and everything and helping them, stay healthy, as they say, even though they're not quite seeing probably all the research that goes on showing it may not be as healthy. And if you even have a little bit of that doubt, why not look for something that does not have that doubt and is more in a natural element within the body?
Yes, just replace it with the teeth. I mean, you can use fluoride or you can use hydroxyapatite treatments on teeth as well. We do it every day in our office. I'm
sure. Yeah. You got toothpaste with hydroxyapatite now. All sorts of things, right, are doing that now. Now, if we move on to another controversial one, root canals, which I know are quite controversial as well. I know Fraser Bailey, good friend who created Root Cause, the documentary. ADA came after, Netflix pulled it. He said, whoa, I didn't expect that, but they did it. They came after him hard and everyone involved, Dr. Minkoff, a friend of mine, like so many people. What's your take on root canals? Let's go back to the start of that then.
Exactly. Let's just go back to the start of it. So clear back in the 1980s or the 1800s, dentistry were even long before that but 1800s, dentistry was done by barbers and by doctors. Kind of interesting. So really the only thing that they were doing was pulling teeth. Well, that's how mercury filling started, as barbers went, this is really hard stuff. I mean, like literally pulling a tooth is really pretty hard. So
I can
I can't even imagine doing it in a barber's chair with no anesthetic. I mean, it'd be terrible. So that's how they started mercury fillings, is they said, gosh, it'd be nice to just like plug something in this hole rather than having to pull so many teeth. Well, the same thing happened with teeth that the cavity had gone all the way to the nerve. So the nerve is now dead inside of the tooth. I said, maybe we can just clean out that nerve place, like clean it out so it doesn't hurt anymore and fill it up. Maybe we can then keep the teeth in the head, keep the teeth so people can chew with them, smile with them. Again, for a good reason. Like nobody wants to lose a tooth. So they figured out, yeah, actually we can. We can use these teeny tiny little instruments that go down inside of the root of the tooth, clean it out really, really well, disinfect it. They use bleach. Actually, that's the disinfectant of choice is bleach. So liquid bleach inside of a tooth, disinfect it, kill the bugs, and then fill it up with the plastic-like stuff. Well, the problem with that is that isn't exactly how a tooth is made. There isn't just one main canal inside of the root. What there is inside of the root is one main canal with teeny little side channels going off of that main canal. They are too small to fill, too small to clean. So you have dead tissue out there. What's dead tissue? It's dead blood vessel tissue and it's dead nerve tissue that's living in those teeny tiny little channels that are going off of that main canal. It doesn't matter if someone did a great job doing the root canal, did a poor job doing the root canal. It doesn't matter. There's no way to get into those little tiny channels. So now that dead tissue attracts bugs. Dead tissue anywhere attracts bugs. This is why if your gallbladder is going bad, if you're having a gallbladder attack, they don't pull your gallbladder out, clean it out, stuff it full of plastic, and then shove it back in you.
Yeah.
You would never think of doing that, right?
Yep.
I mean, would you ever do that? If you have an appendicitis, would they pull the appendix out, clean it all out, fill it full of plastic, and shove it back in?
It's crazy.
No, of course you would never do that. Why would you not do that? Well, because bacteria always are going to find dead tissue, and that's going to be dead tissue. This is why they take off a toe that's gangrenous. If you have a gangrene going on a toe, they're going to take that toe off. Why? Because that dead stuff is going to attract bacteria. It's going to attract bugs. So that's what happens is eventually bugs will find this dead material in those little side channels in the tooth. And those bugs, first of all, they impact your immune strength because your immune system has to fight them nonstop, which wears your immune system out. It's dealing with this nonstop, which leads to a lot of other immune issues, autoimmune conditions that are happening. But it also, then the bacteria congregate at the end of the root. And every single time you chew, that bacteria gets spread through the entire circulatory system. It's just like this pump every single time. So we can't identify these very easily. You can see them if they're big on a regular dental x-ray. You can see that they're there and you go, oh, wow, this is really a biggie, and then they send you back to the root canal specialist, who then chops the end of the root off or just refiles and re-cleans it out and packs it back up again. Doesn't actually take care of the problem because the problem are those little side channels that you can't clean. So we find them on a cone beam CT scan. This is a scan that's a special CT scan of just the head and neck area. I can turn your whole head upside down, inside out. I can cut it piece by piece by piece by piece. I can see everything that's going on at the end of that tooth. You cannot believe the abscesses we are finding. Finding quarter-size holes in people's jawbone that they had no idea was there because it doesn't hurt. Remember, we took the nerve out. The nerve out when the root canal happened. So the huge bone destruction, it's crazy. But not only that is just the health effect. So I see so many patients on a daily basis. So many patients. I've yet to see a patient who has cancer who doesn't have an infection somewhere in their mouth. And I can say that straight up because it's true. You can look back through every single record I've ever taken.
Yeah.
Why? Because this kind of infection is low dose chronic and it affects your immune system's ability to defend yourself against other things. So did the root canal cause the cancer? No, I will never say that. However, the root canal affected the immune system, which then makes the body less defensible. And so that's why we end up with chronic disease, autoimmune disease, other chronic diseases, because the body is no longer able to defend itself nearly as well when it has a chronic infection like this. This is now showing up on CT scans. So I can say this, and I don't have to worry about people throwing tomatoes at me anymore, because I can show you scan after scan after scan after scan of failed root canals. And there's no way to take care of it except for removing the tooth. I wish there were. If there were, I would be the first person to do it. I would like to save your tooth as well. But the only way to do is we have to take out that root with all that dead tissue in it. There's no way to preserve that dead thing in your head and keep you or it healthy.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
a big deal.
The idea of keeping dead organs in the body is just a very strange one altogether.
No, you would never do it. Any other organ, and people don't think of a tooth as an organ.
Oh,
They
it
think
is.
kind of like a fingernail or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
alive. It's alive. A tooth is alive. It's a separate organ. Every single tooth is a separate organ on a separate channel, separate circulatory channel, separate energetic channel, meaning like just the literal energy that goes to it, why you feel it. Why do you feel it?
Mhm.
Because it's alive. Well, that energy actually is circulating and going to other organ systems in the body as
Absolutely.
well. It's all shared.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a big
Map
deal.
that out to the organs, each one. Yeah. There's so much that you could go into, but really quickly, I wanted to touch on that last one that you talked about, wisdom teeth. Can we go into that, where that originated from, and why we should be looking at that?
Yeah, so it goes clear back to Weston Price that we talked about at the beginning.
Mm.
He's found that as we've changed our diets, our mouths are smaller than they used to be.
Mhm.
People often say, well, gosh, why do we have to get our wisdom teeth out? Because they don't freaking fit anymore. Why don't they fit anymore? Well, I don't know, because if you look at skulls from 300 years ago, they all fit.
Yeah.
They had room for all these teeth, and they had straight teeth. What's
Mhm.
going on? Well, it's our diet. It's the food that we're eating. This is actually interesting. So I adopted my son when he was 2.5, and his teeth were lined up like airplane runways, like front teeth, next teeth were right behind him. The next teeth were right behind him. His mouth was so small. His top jaw was on the inside of his bottom jaw. And what I learned at that time is that the top jaw is the first bone affected by malnutrition.
Mm.
So we are, has been quoted, quote unquote, the most overfed, undernourished society in all history, because our food doesn't have nutrients. We're going to just circle it back here. Our food doesn't have nutrients in it anymore. So we are malnourished. Our children are malnourished, and their mouths are forming too small. When your top jaw forms too small, the teeth are crooked. Does anybody ever have to have braces anymore? Everybody has to have braces anymore. Why? So our teeth that we have in the mouth don't fit, and we can't fit them all in. The wisdom teeth don't fit either. So now we don't have room. Now it's causing cavities. It's causing other issues. And so standard process is, we'll just take them out. The problem is when we take them out, there's a ligament surrounding each tooth. It should come out with the tooth. It doesn't just naturally come out with the tooth.
Mm-hmm.
If that ligament's left behind, it's that same dead organ problem. The body doesn't know that the tooth is gone for about 10 days. So it grows gum tissue over, but the bone doesn't heal inside, and it forms a dead zone in that bone that then attracts bacteria. Attracts bacteria, virus, fungus, parasites. We found parasites swimming around in these holes before.
Wow.
So the problem is that the dead stuff lives there, but there's no circulation into the dead zone. I like to think of it kind of like, Portland used to be a few years ago, where there was like that, demilitarized zone or whatever it was that no cops could go in. That's what kind of is going on in these jawbone areas, where the cops can't come in, but they can drop their garbage over the fence out. So they drop all of their toxins out, but the cops can't come in because there's no blood vessels in there. There's no circulatory system in there. So these toxins spread everywhere through the system, are huge effect on the endocrine system. So energy systems, adrenal, thyroid, sex hormones, so estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. If anyone has issues with that, hips and stomach. Those are the things that are really affected by the wisdom teeth areas. If you have had, a lot of times people will track it, they'll say, oh, I've had hypothyroidism since I was 20. When did you get your wisdom teeth out? When I was 19. Never put two and two together. Never. Oh, I have had sleep issues, or I've had hormone problems since I was 20 or 21 or 18, or since I was 15, I've had headaches. Really? When did you get your wisdom teeth out? When I was 15. Interesting. So if this is you, if you had all these weird, and this was on root cause as well, beam CT scan, we can actually see, did those bones heal properly or not? And if they did not, we have to go back in and clean that dead tissue out, clean out that demilitarized zone. We got to clean that out, disinfect all the bugs in there, and then fill it up when we fill it up with stem cells, so it will finally heal this time around. So that is the other big one. And this is completely not even under recognized, but they don't acknowledge. Typically, my profession in general doesn't acknowledge the existence of these things, which is so interesting. Because if you're placing a dental implant, I've placed thousands of dental implants. If you're placing a dental implant, when you're making a channel or a hole in the jawbone to put it into, you'll be drilling, and all of a sudden you go, that drill will just drop in and it'll bleed like crazy. And if you ask any dentist that's placed a dental implant, have you ever fallen into something in the jawbone? They'll go, oh yeah, that happens. That's what I'm talking about. That spot, that's what I'm talking about. The hole, that's what I'm talking about, is that place that didn't heal right. Oh, well, that's not the same thing. No, that's the same thing. That's what I'm talking about. That's full of bugs. That's why it just like explodes when you drop in there. It's full of bugs. So these really aren't even acknowledged in the profession. So you have to find somebody that says, oh, yeah, I'll go check those wisdom teeth areas. I'll see if there's something there that's infected that could be affecting you. And I've had people go from, I had one lady who'd been literally bedridden. She'd had to go back move in with her mom, bedridden, couldn't work. The next morning after cleaning this out, she was up doing the dishes.
Oh, yeah.
Her mom was like, what in the world? I had a gentleman who was blind. He's blind, was losing his hearing, which was his only connection to the world. Clean these out, 80% hearing back by the time this infection had gone and was resolved. So huge effect on bodies and people when these infections are living in these areas.
It is incredible how dentistry can be the source sometimes of chronic disease, but just a simple fix to it and acknowledging that it was the source can be the thing that turns it all around. And I mean, we've seen it so much, and I deal with so many different practitioners that if you just address the dental issues, that's like 90%. The rest is actually somewhat easy to address those other little symptoms that popped out, but it was all really starting there in your mouth. So Dr. Jorgensen, you're doing so much that is great on that side, but you also have a charity. I do want to touch on that quickly before you go. Living Well Foundation. Can you tell us about that?
That's who was running the gardens that I actually opened a huge market garden last year. But so I am trying to get food to people. I'm trying to really identify and help with these food deserts. These places where people simply don't have food, don't have access to food. I want to teach them how to find food wherever they are, wherever you are. And that's really the Living Well Today Foundation is to do that. It's to help people get what they need to be healthy, to live well wherever they live. And it starts with this. It starts with just information and sharing and knowledge.
Of course. I love it. And that definitely helps people, not just with their health, but also with their teeth. It's all interrelated anyway. So where can people learn more about you, about your practice, the Living Well Foundation, everything?
Yep, please. So just check out livingwellwithdrmichelle.com. That's online. It's on all the social channels. And go on there because I have so much free information. I have so many videos, so many case studies, so many stories. Go on there and check it out. I have a hydroxyapatite tooth product, so you can check out as well if you're interested in switching out from fluoride. Also, my dental practice is called Total Care Dental. We see people from all over the world. We love to help you. And on that Living Well with Dr. Michelle site, we have a dental directory. So I teach dentists and I vet them for you. So I let you know these are dentists that you're going to be able to find this kind of care with. And that is a growing network. I think we have, 45 dentists or so throughout the US, but we want more. So if you know someone that should be on our directory, please send them our way because we have so many people reaching out every single day that say, how can I find a dentist just like you? So that's what we're doing is trying to find dentists that are providing this kind of care. So if you know one that should be on our list, please let us know. And if you're looking for one, please look on our list.
Amazing work. Thank you for all you do and passing it forward, also helping other dentists realize, what you had to so many years ago and helping so many people regain their health. Thank you for coming on, Dr. Jorgensen.
Thank you.
And remember, check out livingwellwithdrmichelle.com for more information. And until next time, continue writing your own healing story.